Two Iraqis came here to this country, were radicalized.
For that terror attack overseas.
Total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
First of all, we should develop detention centers for them.
Everywhere there is Islam, you'll find women oppressed.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the... let me try that one more time. And this is the beauty of being always live, is that these wonderful little hiccups like that happen. So let me try that just one more time. Assalamu alaikum, boys and girls. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode, although be it a late night episode, of Raw Islam with Imam Azhar. And because it is late and because there is much to get into, because I know we have an amazing episode this evening, because we're going to talk about taquitos, but not right away, of course. Let me introduce the man himself, the legend, the myth. Ladies and gentlemen, say assalamu alaikum to Imam Azhar.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, fellow listeners. Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings and mercy of Allah be with all of you. Thank you for joining us this evening, this late. I'm coming to you tonight from Coral Springs, Florida. We just completed an interfaith event. The topic was what is Sharia in Palm Beach, Florida, and I just made the drive down. So I thank you all for tuning in tonight. And as Carl said, tequilos.
No tequila. We are Muslims. Muslims do not. No. Taquitos.
We're talking taquitos. So inshallah, before we get into that, Carl, I just want to start to say, how are you doing, Carl? How's everything?
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I'm trying to deal with the DC weather here. It is hot here in DC, but it's I'm making it all right. So
that's great. Well, Carl, tonight we're kind of doing this segment late because I drove 200 miles from Tampa this afternoon to give a lecture this evening in Palm Beach at St. Mark Episcopal Church on the topic of what is Sharia. As you know, in the Raw Islam podcast, we've been covering topics of such from the get-go because we feel it's imperative for us through the title of Raw Islam to tackle exactly those that are festering in our society today. Those problems aren't Sharia or other terminologies like Taqiyya or Jihad. Rather, these are the misconstruing and the misrepresentation, which leads to the misunderstanding, which results into the demonization of the other. Faith is very amazing. Everyone has different faiths, and the diversity alone is unique. But when we fail to understand the totality of the faith and the complexities that lie within it, and we draw premature conclusions, we result in spreading fear and hate in our world. So it was amazing how this came to be, Carl. One of the Muslim brothers of West Palm Beach had met with the father of the Palm Beach St. Mark Episcopal Church, and in their dialogue, they thought that it would be unique to host something at their church pertaining to Islam. The father asked, what topic would you suggest? And they just said Sharia. So alhamdulillah, we began today at 7 p.m. It lasted all the way till 9, although we officially finished at 8:30. And it was an amazing experience where people had the opportunity to wipe the slate in their mind clean and allow themselves to reconstruct an image of what they had preconceived notions about.
That was a mouthful. but you're right, that is what we do here at Raw Islam, and that is the goal of this. And I know in the past we've talked about Sharia, and I know we've talked about I know there was one thing. I don't know if it was on your Facebook or something we did. I totally have forgotten. But there was one about do Muslims and Christians and Jews all believe in the same Sharia, and you know, going to that nasty word that we're not allowed to speak. You know, the J word. And whereas you are in a public place in Florida, we won't let you say that out loud too much, but but it really, you know, one of our friends has been under some fire lately because they used that word, and apparently they weren't supposed to. But yeah, and you know, I'll tell you a really funny story, and I know my wife's in the room tonight. I hope I don't get dirty looks for telling you this story, but it was funny because she has a friend whose brother, his actual name is Jihad. That's his name. And they said that, you know, he was a huge football player in high school. Huge football player. Always did good, mashallah, mashallah. But the story is that before 9/11, they'd always go to the games and they'd go Jihad, go. After 9/11, they didn't cheer for him that much.
Well, you know, the name again. Look how successful hate groups are when they can actually demonize a name enough that it instills fear in the hearts of people.
Very true.
Forget the image or idea of a person or a people or a color of a person's skin. This is just a name, and it's baffling. And so you know what we covered tonight was the three most misunderstood parts of Islam. What we did a drill with the people, the participants, and I told them to close their eyes and think about the first thought that comes to their mind when I say the following words. So I said rose, chocolates, seashore, Jesus, and then I asked three more, which everyone during the course of the talk kind of hinted towards the fact that a negative perception came up, and that was Muslim, Sharia, and Jihad. And so what happened was that everyone understood that there are preconceived notions. As soon as you see these words, an image comes up in your head. And I'm sure that our listeners right now, as I said these words, ask yourself what came up in your head upon hearing this. What was the image that was drawn? Was it beautiful or was it scary? Was it bright or was it dark? And what we then did is we went into discussing each one of these, who Muslims are, what is Sharia, and we talked about Sharia from the angle of what the application of Sharia did for the greater good of humanity, and if that's what it did, then what is Sharia itself? And then we kind of tackled the misconceptions of, the beheadings, the torture, and the forced marriages, and the whole 9 yards. But of course, we only had like an hour to speak and half an hour to take questions. And at the end, I talked about the J word, and the J word. I also brought up the controversy that occurred out of ISNA, and I think that's what you're referencing towards.
It
right,
was
Carl?
100% exactly what I was talking about.
So, and it's amazing how that transpired, because Linda Sarsour was speaking at a function at lunch, which wasn't open to the public. There was tickets sold for that, and in that, which was a Lifetime Appreciation Award for one of the members of ISNA, she talked about the word jihad, but she used it in the context of how our struggle is real as we continue to fight for a more inclusive and a better America, I believe. Don't take me if I'm wrong here. Do you have the statement on you? Do you have the statement
don't.
what she said?
I actually have not researched what she said, and I will tell you it is totally out of laziness, because I know her and I've met with her on multiple occasions and I've spoken with her on multiple occasions. So I know what her intent was. I know where she was going with that. So I haven't looked into what she said at all.
So there was a transcript of what she had said, and I read through it briefly. But again, we're in a world where cut and paste is the norm, right? And where we can put two different parts of things together and bring a wholesome picture that would suit our whims and desires. Nevertheless, she came under a media storm, to the extent that even Donald Jr., who was of course a man of transparency and openness, also presented his thoughts about her. But at the end of the day, how long are we willing to allow fear to live within our minds and our hearts and to change the pattern of our lifestyles of what we're accustomed to doing? Fear is the unseen force that can put us in our cocoons and allow us to stitch them up. So I think the fact that we talked about it tonight, got some positive feedback in person and also on Facebook, and listeners are told that they could connect with us on Facebook and see what's going on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, that in perspective, just in a nutshell, what postponed our event tonight, our podcast recording. And yeah, these are some of the battles that even till today we have to continue to fight. These are ideological battles. And Carl, the amazing thing is people say, just let it go, right? Have you heard that one before? Just let it go.
Of course, just let it go. It's not that important. It's not that. There's more important things to focus on. Worry about other things. Worry about yourself. Just let it go.
Carl, you know what I'm scared now because I feel that you're one of those people who say just let it go, because you've articulated it so nicely. Just let it go. There's other important things. We have a segment of the society from the Muslim community that says, yes, let it go. Just forget about it. Other ones say stop using the word altogether. Some say let's change it out. Let's change it out because we have to adapt to the times that we live in. But my fellow listeners, and I want you to comment on this. Do you feel that you need to change who you are in order to fit in the world that we live in today? My answer is no, because the question I would have to ask first, what do I need to let go of, to what extent, and to whom am I trying to appease to? What am I going to fit into? Is there any standard model? A lady had asked, Carl, interesting, she asked a question during the question answer segment of our program tonight. She asked that if the women who cover themselves and they cover their faces, if that's their religious culture, that they shouldn't do it out in public. They should rather go home and do it or do it in their mosques. Why do they have to do it out in the open? Because it's contrary to American culture. So I listened to her and I gave an answer which I think kind of highlighted. I said my wife and I had an opportunity to go up to New York for a couple of days, and we went to a museum. In the museum, it talked about the history of America and the culture. And I still distinctly remember a dress that was on display that, of course, the women were covered from head to toe, right? And there was a mesh around their waist and around their bosom, which would not allow the clothing to touch it directly, showing the shape of it. So it was like a very covering dress with even a head piece, like a hat.
Right.
And I said, that's American culture. But then you go to South Beach, that's also American culture. So what culture are you trying to say? Because American culture is so unique. It's so, it's not unique. It's so different. It's so diverse.
Yeah.
There is no one culture that suits and fits all from the Bible Belt to to the Rockies or to the urban cities. This is everywhere is distinct and unique. So when people have issues or problems or concerns with certain words or certain practices or certain belief systems or cultural norms, it's imperative that we tackle them by educating them and explaining to them what they mean and how significant they are to yourself. If we don't do that, what we'll ultimately do is we will hurt ourselves, because haters will always be out there. There's always going to be someone who has something to criticize about yourself. It's an interesting story. We talk about criticism. There was once a saint. It's a story, but I love this story. There was a saint who was very godly, and people loved him, and he was admired so much by anyone who was in contact with him. But his wife always found faults in him, right? So every time he would come home, he'd get that dose of reality that, he just, you're not perfect type of thing. But when he would go out, of course, he'd be in cloud nine because everyone's praising you and, appreciating you. So what he thought to himself one day was, I'm gonna show to my wife that I'm truly, perfect in my godly manner, right? So he was on his carpet, and I'm sure, Carl, you watch Aladdin, right?
Yes, of course. I have little children. I have seen that.
And you know that Disney was currently in this controversy because they couldn't find a character to play Aladdin in their upcoming movie.
Yeah,
I think they just found someone. That's sad.
Oh, they did. Now I have to go look that up. Yeah, because that's a whole different conversation there. That's you know you know
Well,
what?
they just did. He's from Bollywood. So, anyways, this sheikh was like a Aladdin where he could fly on his carpet. So what he did is he got on his carpet and he flew by his wife while she was at the house. And so he came home at night, honey, how you doing? Everything fine? Yeah, yeah, same old. And she started, pointing out, flaws, pointing out some weaknesses. And he tried to overlook those and said, did you see anything today? She was like, same old day. But you must have saw something different, anything unique or something. And she couldn't recap or she couldn't recollect what he was trying to reference to. So he said, did anyone fly by today? She said, yeah. There was a person who flew by on a carpet, right? And she looked so amazed and astonished. He goes, that's me. She goes, I know that was you. He's like, what do you mean? She goes, you were flying crooked. So I knew that was you. So even when you were flying, you were crooked. So the point is that, the flaws are always going to be out there and people are always going to find flaws. And we have to have thick enough skin to overlook those flaws and not fall to the victimization from these people that we silence ourselves. So Carl, last week you told us there was a question, and that question came from one of our dedicated listeners. And I want to thank all our listeners out there who are either listening to this listening to it live as we are recording, or to those who will listen it to after via iTunes or Google Play or Venn Network. Carl, tell us what that question was.
Well, it wasn't so much a question as it was a comment, and
Okay.
I'm also fairly certain that this person is not a dedicated listener,
Okay.
but they are certainly a listener of some sort.
Okay.
But I lost it here. I'm just trying to pull it back up. But when this episode goes, we will definitely link them and let them know that we are that we answered their question, inshallah.
Perfect.
So, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, dedicated or not, criticism or question, everything is welcome.
Yes.
We just want to let everyone know, even if they want to make fun of what we're doing, they want to put down a faith or a culture or practice, or they actually have some evidence or backing to prove something that we may have said wrong. And we're not saying we're perfectly right and correct and the buck stops here. No, we are trying to better ourselves in our pursuit of our life. That's what Islam is about in our journey. And if anyone could enrich our understanding with something that we may not be aware of, and it's relevant and it's current, we want it. So go ahead. What did Joe say?
So Joe, well, first off, we're called the Venn Network because it's a Venn diagram, where everybody meets in the middle. But Joe was happy to call us the Taquitos Network, and he said, go ahead and lie to the non-Muslims. I am perfectly fine with y'all being left alone in peace. Call a fatwa or whatever it is that all Muslims return to their homelands. Some racial slurs, some comments about Eastern culture, and you won't be subjected to discrimination by us kafirs or have out lunatics. Okay, some more racial slurs. There's nothing about you people to suggest you do not have the intention of subjugating the entire world with your theological cult. Everything you do is Taqiyya.
Now, could you spell out that? Because I thought he was joking with that, but how do you spell it?
Taqiyya.
So Taqiyya. Okay, so he kind of spelled it correct. Okay, so what Joe, Joe, thank you for your comments. Even as it's kind of disrespectful. I just would request that in the future, we want to hear your true concerns, but it's imperative we keep our conversations and our comments
Civil.
and questions civil. With language of sort that is racial or that is profanity, really doesn't help solve a problem. At times when people get angry, they say things and they start doing things which don't address the problem. And by venting our anger, it doesn't get us in any better position.
No.
So what Joe is saying, Carl, is there is a term that is addressed to the Muslim community that is known as Taqiyya. Now, the first time I heard this in an interfaith conference, interfaith dialogue, a couple of years ago, I was dumbfounded. And I was like asking myself, did I miss a lesson in my 10 years of study that was I washing dishes that day, or was I, cleaning bathrooms? What happened that day? I really don't know. How did I miss Taqiyya? And after looking into it, it's basically an accusation that's pointed towards the Muslims highlighted on behalf of the Islamophobia industry, which again is a $200 million industry. And of course, fear sells.
I would say it's probably bigger than that, would be my guess. But I could be wrong. But I think it was anyway. Continue.
Yeah, the sum continues to go up. Why? Because it's in demonizing a people that one could instill fear, and by instilling fear, one could profit. I think that's, at the end of the day, it's all economics. It's all about money. But so they are saying that in your religion there is this thing that you will live in the West, lying about your presence, lying about your motive, and lying about what your faith is about. And basically you're hiding, waiting to harm the masses. So there is something, Carl, in our holy text, in the Quran, which says that a person has the right, to some extent it may even be, I don't want to say an obligation, but someone should, at a time that their life is inflicted with harm, that they may be killed or something happens, that they can denounce their faith. The Quran says that a person can denounce their Islam if someone put them in a position that their life would be taken if they didn't do so. So they may do that. This is because the life of a person is important, and the preserving of the life is important. And so this justification is there. They've taken this verse and they've taken it to a whole new level, saying that we will openly as Muslims lie to everyone and hide our internal motives as Muslims and act like we're all American or Western, but internally we are haters of any civilization or any faith outside of our own. And there is no basis for that. First of all, let me dissect Taqiyya as it is presented to the masses, tainting the faith and what it entails. Number one, there's lying, right? And lying in Islam is a sin. And not only is a sin, but Allah says in the Quran at numerous times that He does not like those who lie. So number one, if Taqiyya was to be for us to lie to others with in confidence, like with confidence that we're good people and stuff, then we've lied and we've done wrong to our faith and we've sinned. Number one. Number two, it's deceitful, it's deception. And deception is also something which our Quran, the holy text, and the Hadith, the practice of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, teach us that deceiving is not the practice of a believer. A believer doesn't deceive. I'll give you a good example, Carl, just came to mind. There was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who in the morning in the market had a heap of dry grains. It had rained the night before, and so the Prophet stuck his hand into that heap and he pulled out wet grains. And he said, "What is this?" He goes, "Well, the Prophet, look, it rained last night, and if I was to just sell the wet grains, no one's going to buy them, so I covered it up with dry ones so that, it would sell. I could mix it all in." So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Man ghashana falaysa minna." Whoever deceives us is not from us. So by deceiving humanity, we have already been taken out from what it means to be a Muslim. So number one, there's lying. And Allah does not like those who lie. The Quran says this multiple times. Deceiving the Prophet Muhammad in this instant tells us deceiving is not from us. You know, the third part I extract from this, Carl, is that in this, if we were to do what they claim is called Taqiyya, we are doing an act of hypocrisy. And when you open the chapter of the cow, the second chapter of the Quran, which is the longest chapter, in the get-go, Allah talks about the three categories of human beings. He talked about amongst to the Muslims. He told them there's the Muslim, the one, the believer. And remember, we talked about what a Muslim is. A Muslim is someone who willingly submits to God. So anyone who willingly submits to God is a Muslim. And what happened, that God talks about a Muslim, then he talks about the non-Muslim, the one who rejects it and rejects its presence. Then he talked about the third category known as the hypocrites. And the hypocrites, in many places of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks very harsh when it comes to hypocrisy and hypocrites. In one verse that I can recall, Allah says that verily the hypocrites will be in the core of the hellfire. And the reason is because they play such a game that they don't even know what they stand for. It's like when the good is on the side of the Muslims, hey, we're Muslims. When it's not, they're with the other people. This game playing puts a person in a position where they themselves don't know where they stand. So if hypocrisy is the means of being in the core of the hellfire, if lying is something that Allah doesn't like, and the people who lie, liars, are cursed, and if the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, whoever deceives us is not from us, tell me, Carl, which part of this taqiyya makes it Islamic? Do you find anything?
None of it. And I had actually never heard that hadith before, and I like that hadith. That's very good, and it's a very good example that this kind of stuff is not something that we do. I know you and I had talked about this whole thing, this topic, a little bit before we started this, and I was telling you that I have a guy that I work with, and he's pretty much said the same thing. You know, he's like, I had never heard that word, I had never heard that concept up until probably a year or two ago.
Yep.
And I mean, he was born and raised in a good Muslim household, you know, good Muslim parents and the whole 9 yards. But he's like, up until about a year, 2 years ago, he's like, I'd never even heard that word. I didn't know what it meant.
And correct, you're right. And I myself, as I said, I was baffled. I was like, you know, I was dumbfounded. Like, do I even know what's happening here? But then when you do research, you find out what's been taken out of context and what's sold in the market, right? This is a message sold in the market. In Islam, we're told to be upright and straight about who we are. This is who we are. This is what our faith is. It doesn't mean that you have to embrace us and accept what our teachings are. That's for me. I've taken on the faith for myself, and that's something that I feel is my calling, which I have to do to pursue my the pleasure of my Lord and to fulfill my life in a manner that is pleasing to Him. That's for me. And what is there for me to hide in that? Because a person only hides something when they feel it's not right. And for me, I feel it's right, and I'm not going to hide it. And for the greater on the greater scale, Carl, the thing is that we're living in a world of differences. I said this again today in the interfaith event that we had. I told everyone, look, breaking news, we're all different.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel the slightest second in your life, for the slightest second, that we can live in a world where no differences exist, I think that's heaven, right? Because we're different from our tongues, the languages we speak. We're different from the color of our skin. We're different from our cultures. We're different on the aspect of our religion. There's so many things that make us different. How can we expect us to, you know, unanimously just be one and all the same? These differences are there, but these differences aren't our weakness. These aren't things that will put us down. Actually, these differences are what enriches us, and the diversity is what makes us stronger and better. So again, you know, I appreciate that comment, because what I said to them at the time of the questions and answers is, remember, nothing is below the belt. What I tried to say, which I couldn't say at that time, was nothing offends. You know, Carl, would you rather, my question to you is, would you rather have someone who be nice to you and doesn't want to offend you, but they think really bad about you and they have this misconstrued ideology about you? Or would you rather have them, in all honesty, confront you and say, is this the truth or not? What would you like?
Yeah, honestly, and this is kind of how I try to live my life at a very large scale. Is that it's only through better understanding of each other that we're going to come to a better society, and we're going to figure out how to work together, and we're going to figure out how to make more things happen. And the only way you're going to come to that level of understanding is through communication, which only happens through honest questions. I mean, if everybody turned on, and I'm going to go ahead and name this company, but if everybody turned on Fox News every night, and that was all that was anybody ever watched was Fox News, that doesn't leave a very good aftertaste in one's mouth. And that doesn't lead to better understanding of people. It just propagates the fear.
So, as what you just said, on a personal level, that you would want those people who are close to your friends or your families or your neighbors to be honest to you. You want them to be you want them to express themselves openly, without fear, without reservation. And so that's exactly what we ask our crowd: speak and let out what you have. And I'll relate to what one lady said, and it kind of raised eyebrows in the crowd. But I try to address the crowd and say, listen, let her finish off whatever she's saying. She has a right to ask, and I welcome whatever questions or concerns she has. And one of those questions was about the culture, as I just told you, about why don't they just cover up in the house and not outside. Another part of her question was that there are no-go zones in America and in England, where Muslims control 4 areas in this country where the government cannot enter. And again, Carl, I know you're hitting your head against the microphone. Don't hit it too hard. You might break the microphone.
We actually covered that. It doesn't exist. It's not real. Stop.
And no, but I told her, I told her this is one of the many accusations that came out from people like, for example, Bobby Jindal. But you know what? I lived in England for almost 8 years, and we're here in America. If there is a place like this, can you please identify for me? And we could go see it ourselves. Let's go see if that's actually happening. Yes, there are places in England where there are. The difference between England and America is in England there are a lot of Muslims, but they are highly concentrated in their locality. So Muslims have a great presence in certain neighborhoods, which is more of a homely feeling for them. We're here in America, we are mixed into our neighborhoods with all our neighbors. So there isn't, and I told her there isn't. But again, you just said the name of the news media outlet that can continue to drive these stories, which instill in the hearts and engrave in the minds of these people that this does exist. It's just like telling them right now, and I'm looking up at the sunroof here. It's dark because it's nighttime. It's like 12:40 in the morning.
It is
but
well past my bedtime.
But if they continue to tell you, no, it's daytime, then tomorrow you'll be saying, yes, it's daytime. So I think in conclusion here, Carl, is it's time that we all reintroduce ourselves to one another, because there's been this void in America for too long where we acknowledge that there was different races and cultures and religions, but we really didn't care about it. But now, not only are we caring about it, we feel threatened by it. So it's imperative to go out and learn. Go out and learn. This is the main word here, learn. And the way we learn is not from any person, but ourselves. We go with our instincts, with our senses. We go out and we see with our eyes, we speak and we hear to those people who we have misunderstandings, and try to understand if that's true or not. And if you go to a mosque or you go to an Islamic center and you ask them about things, they'll welcome you and they'll be hospitable and they'll answer all your questions. But if you stay in front of someone who is a Middle East expert because they lived 6 months in Egypt or in Iraq, I'm sure you're not going to get the picture that that is, that's the right picture. So go out there, ask the questions, see for yourself, hear for yourselves, and then allow your mind to articulate an answer which may, at the very least, release you from the shackles of fear. Because remember, so long you stay indoors and you continue to allow that negative thoughts fester in your mind, you're just allowing fear to live in you and to maneuver your life for free. And I don't think that's a good deal. To me, I think that's sad. That's really sad.
No, you are 100% right. It's one of the things that I'm coming to understand, over the past couple of months here or whatever, is that unfortunately fear sells. And I'm actually about to twist this, so you'll have to forgive me, and our audience will have to forgive me as well. But fear sells. Fear raises money. And obviously, I forget what number you just threw out, but it was in the millions. These companies make millions off of fear. That's really hundreds of millions of dollars off of fear. And what we're doing is not fear-based. We're trying to clear the air. We're trying to build a better society through better understanding of each other, of our neighbors, of just everything and everyone everywhere. So with that being said, because honesty and truth doesn't feed on people's fears, it's not always that profitable. So make sure you go check out the Venn Network on our Patreon page to help support this show, because we don't feed on people's fears.
Well, Carl, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we're not here to sell fear. We're not going to buy fear. We're here to provide facts.
Yes.
We're here to provide access. We're here to provide what we know and listen to what you feel. And by doing that, our collaboration can build a better understanding within the greater community. A question was asked again tonight. Why don't you guys go on the mainstream media news outlets and talk about it? And I said, look, you're living in a world of 24 hours news, right? 24-hour news channels. And you're telling me when they talk about Islam and instill the fear, and what you said, Carl, I said it multiple times, and I always say this: fear sells, and it's a no-brainer. It brings in big money, and if it's bringing in the money, why would they not do it? I said that's their job. Don't criticize them. That's what they do. And by me going on there, or you going on there, or anyone else going on there, it's not going to change. It's not going to change, especially when they're talking about a negative perception for 23 hours and 55 minutes. You're going to go on for 2-3 minutes. It's not going to change the game. But what will change a game is a grassroots effort where people meet with people, neighbors understand neighbors, communities understand the people within their communities, and that relationship continues to grow from the community level to state level to national level. You'll see how the fear will ultimately dissipate. Why? Because there will be no one reacting to it. We don't want a society that reacts. We want a society that's proactive. And a proactive society comes when they're empowered with knowledge and understanding, when they have the facts. And when they have the facts, they'll just scoff and just, brush it off, whatever's being sold. And ultimately, that momentum will be lost. So thank you once again for talking about Taqiyya. Thank you for bringing it up. And I think it couldn't come on a better day as today, as we just concluded this event in Palm Beach, Florida. And looking forward to doing many more of these. So just want to request all our listeners, send in your comments, send in your questions. Share this with your non-Muslim friends if you're Muslim listening, because our goal is not to just speak about the faith, but to understand the misunderstandings that are out there, especially from those who are not from the faith. So I hope you guys could do that for us. Thank you.
Inshallah. Now, this is something that I've been doing on my Facebook page over the last week or so. I've been doing a lot of Facebook Lives, and I know this is a different setup, but I'm going to try it. So I think right here, if you just, right there's a little box, because see, on Facebook it looks different, but right there's a little box, and you can type all your questions and comments and everything else in there. And obviously, as we've just seen tonight, even if they're not pleasurable, we give them to the Imam and we let him respond. But the one thing I do want to echo that he said is, let's try to keep it PG-13, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with no, go ahead.
No. Continue. The PG is what we would just, again, civility and professionalism. No profanity, no slurs, no racial slurs. These things, again, they don't go anywhere. It's like the kryptonite story we talked about. Remember our kryptonite story about the bacon?
Did you see the story in England?
I know. Yes.
And for those that don't know, I think it was a teenage girl was walking home from the mosque or from school or something, and some dude walked up and threw bacon at her face. What is that? What the best response that I've seen about that lately is Muslims laughing, going, ha ha ha, you wasted perfectly good bacon.
Well, again, that's the result of fear, right? And that's what we're here to dispel.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will once again apologize for the hour, but I can tell you that next week things are going to change and we will start being on earlier. If you have a time that you would like to see this on, make sure you convert it to Eastern Standard Time when you comment on the post, because I'm not all that smart when it comes to time zones. But go ahead and leave the time down in the comments below, like we said earlier, and maybe we can definitely try to see if we can get a majority of people and we can get into that little slot so that we're all on the same time when most of you are online. But with all of that being said, I want to thank all of you for listening. I want to thank all of you for sharing this. I want to thank Imam Azhar for taking time out of his day, even though he literally just did an interfaith event, drove to the hotel, and for those of you that can kind of see this and you're watching this on Facebook, you see he's in the lobby. The brother hasn't even gone to his hotel room yet. He just came into the lobby and sat down with us to get this done. So thank you, Imam Azhar. It's always a pleasure and an honor to do this with you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome, sir. Thank you so much.
And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, boys and girls, we will say, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.